let's get into the next segment here, and then we'll go to the mailbag. These are my top 10 contract year breakout players. And I normally don't do these in any particular order, but I kind of loosely rank these as far as how much money I think these guys made themselves, whether it's positional value or how well they played themselves. But I rank these 10 through 1, 10 being the smallest contracts. But these guys are all getting the bag this summer. So these are 10 players that we often talk about. Oh, it's a contract year for this guy. Maybe he takes a step up. And it's kind of a crutch, rhetoric. People throw it around a lot. But I do believe in contract years. I really do. This list is evident of it. It doesn't always play out this way, but I do think there's something to a player having that extra motivation on the last year of their contract to get the bag. I think it matters. I think when you're an athlete, sometimes you need that mental edge to put in that extra rep in the gym or stay a little longer at practice. I do think in a lot of players' cases, that motivation helps them. So here we go. Number 10 is a cornerback for the Washington football team, Ronald Darby, who I thought had, I'm not going to say the best year of his career. He had some really good years for Buffalo early on in his career. He was pretty good in his Super Bowl year for Philadelphia, but he had a couple down years. He ends up getting let go from Philadelphia and signs a pretty cheap contract here for Washington. I think it was 1 year, like $4 million for Washington. And he crushed it. He crushed it in this scheme with Ron Rivera. He showed, to me this year, his best year as a zone cover corner. The league runs a lot of zone coverage. On average, the league runs, I think it's like 78% of the coverage in the league is zone. Team dependent, of course. Some teams are closer to 50% man coverage, but nobody runs more than 50% man coverage in the league. So anyway, Ronald Darby, really comfortable understanding route combinations and pairing that athleticism with better tackling this year and better composure as a corner. And I think Ronald Darby is going to be one of the top paid free agents this year because of his positional value. A player that has been a little more polarizing, and corner is a position that can vary very much year to year. But Ronald Darby crushed it for the Washington football team. A great signing. And I think Washington is going to, I guess that's the other thing here, is I'm going to predict kind of where they end up. But I do think Ronald Darby is going to end up back in Washington, comfortable in that scheme, paying back Washington for, basically rewarding Washington for taking a chance on him and crushing it there for Washington. There are 2 honorable mentions here that didn't quite make this list, actually 3. And that's going to be William Jackson for the Bengals. Didn't quite make the list because he was a little more hit or miss, but he had a great season. He'll get paid this year. He might be the top paid corner this year, more than Ronald Darby. Then I had Allen Robinson. Great year for the Bears, but we know Allen Robinson's great, so he didn't make the list for that reason. But he did have a great year, and he's going to get paid. And then Romeo Okwara for the Detroit Lions also didn't make the list because I don't know how much he'll truly make. He had a kind of an outlier season, but he definitely made himself some money, like 60 pressures this year. I don't know if he hit double-digit sacks or not, but kind of that bigger body defensive end made himself some money. So next up, excuse me, we have Trey Hendrickson, edge rusher for the New Orleans Saints. And he's been a depth piece for them because that roster is so loaded. Talk about a team that goes all in. He's been their, third edge rusher. He rotates in. But he had a great season and made himself a lot of money. And he played really great in some primetime games and really made a name for himself as a guy that I think deserves a good chunk of money, probably about $8, $9, $10 million a year. And this is not a great edge rush free agency group. And if there's teams looking for some edge help, I do think Trey Hendrickson makes a lot of sense. He's a harder team to predict where he ends up. I didn't write these down before I started, so I'm trying to come up with something on the fly here. But really, any team that has some cap space, maybe the Indianapolis Colts, that needs a number 2 defensive end in a 4-3 scheme, can be a good run defender, a decent pass rusher. I look at Trey Hendrickson there as a good option. I need a sip of water here because my voice is getting away from me. All right, number 8. Contract year breakouts. Darrell Williams, right tackle for the Buffalo Bills. This is a player that's had a roller coaster career. He was a second-round pick for the Carolina Panthers years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and slowly emerged as a top right tackle for the Panthers, and then suffered a serious injury, came back on a 1-year deal for the Panthers. They ended up sliding him in at guard. Kind of a weird situation. I never understood why the Panthers did that. And he just wasn't as good, wasn't healthy. Came here to Buffalo on another 1-year deal, trying to recapture what was about 2 years ago one of the top right tackles in the NFL, and they got that player. They got Darrell Williams, was a top 10 right tackle this year. He has not been extended yet. I do think Buffalo would be smart to bring him back, but his market could continue to rise. We've seen offensive tackles get a lot of money, and Darrell Williams does have an injury history. You worry about that. You worry about the roller coaster nature of his career, but man, he played like a $15, $16, $17 million right tackle this year, and he very well may get that type of money. Teams might be worried about, like I said, his roller coaster history. I thought he should have gotten paid a lot more than he did the year he came back to Carolina. So I don't know if the league still perceives him as that player or if they're going to wake up and see the player that he was this year. But Darrell Williams crushed it at right tackle for the Buffalo Bills. Then another Carolina Panther here, Curtis Samuel, made himself a lot of money this season. It's a premium position, wide receiver. Look no further than Robbie Anderson on this team, who got $10 million last year after being nothing more than like a quality number 2 receiver for the Jets. But Curtis Samuel is that player that so many teams are looking for. That explosive after-the-catch receiver, a guy that has the speed to separate quickly, and a guy that can get vertical. You know, he is like a very poor man's Tyreek Hill in a lot of ways, and teams are going to look at him in that way. Jalen Reagor doesn't go 20th overall or whatever to the Philadelphia Eagles if there was not evidence that teams want players like Curtis Samuel. So he's a versatile piece. He can even play some running back. And his market's going to be very fascinating because I think Carolina would love to bring him back. However, they're already paying Christian McCaffrey $16 million. They're paying Robbie Anderson $10 million. They're going to have to pay DJ Moore probably within the next year about $18, $19 million. So if you lock up Curtis Samuel to his market value, which is... Oh, and as far as where Darrell Williams, I said Darrell Williams probably going to be back in Buffalo. But yeah, that's a lot of money to invest in the skill players there for the Panthers, and I don't think it's a bad idea, but I think when you're paying Christian McCaffrey, who can do a lot of the similar things, it does get a little clunky as far as putting all that money into the skill players. So I do think that his market could outprice what the Panthers are willing to pay, and if someone wants to give Curtis Samuel $11, $12, $13 million, I don't know if the Panthers are going to match that. And I'm looking at teams like the Washington football team, the Miami Dolphins, the New England Patriots, the New York Jets, teams with cap space that need a player like this. I would also look maybe at the Cleveland Browns. Would be fascinating. Bring him back to Ohio, where he's from, and they run that Shanahan offense. And Curtis Samuel, in a lot of ways, very similar to Deebo Samuel. Not related, but... at least I don't think they're related, but similar players in that you design them open, crossing route guru, get them going on jet sweep stuff, can line them up in the backfield, and the Browns are kind of missing that piece. And if you brought Curtis Samuel in here, get Odell back, Jarvis Landry, man, that's an intriguing piece. So I definitely have my eye on the Cleveland Browns as a great fit for Curtis Samuel. I do think the Panthers try to get him back. And then any other team that needs a receiver, I think the Patriots would be smart to get a player like this as well. So yeah, Curtis Samuel. And then number 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 on our list is Carl Lawson for the Cincinnati Bengals. I've loved Carl Lawson. He was one of my original great draft takes. I try to throw out my draft takes from that season, though, because I really only evaluated like 40 players. I liked Nathan Peterman in that class. I think part of that was I didn't do the whole class. I didn't put a lot of film in. I only watched like 2 games from all the quarterbacks. Like that year it was kind of a wash. It was my first year with this channel. I was doing another job. It really was, not something I would put on my resume per se. But I did really like Carl Lawson because he has that true ability to convert speed to power. He's got get off. He's got length, and he's at 6'2", so he kind of comes in low. And he's got pass rushing moves. He's got bend. He can convert it to power. He can drive you backwards. He can, stem different pass rush moves. He is the, ideal pass rusher from a skill set point of view. The problem with Carl Lawson is he's had an injury history, and he is quote unquote undersized. Sometimes that lack of length can hurt him as far as distancing himself and leveraging himself against his blocker, but he's just an awesome player. I think he is the best edge rusher available on the market this year, and the Bengals have not locked him up quite yet. And I do think they bring him back because they'd be really dumb not to. They already let Dunlap go. They got to keep Carl Lawson in there. But if they don't, Carl Lawson could be getting a surprising amount of money, $18, $19 million type of stuff. But you are worried about the injury history, so it might be a situation where maybe the guarantees aren't all there because of the injury history. But yeah, Carl Lawson crushed it for the Bengals this year. I don't have his numbers in front of me. If I had to guess, I would say he had probably 65 pressures. Let's look it up real quick. Let's just grab the Carl Lawson profile. I'm going to guess that he had 65 pressures and 10 sacks is my guess on Carl Lawson. So you're looking at like a low-end number 1 pass rusher here. Let's see. He had 64 pressures and 6 sacks. So, yeah, Carl Lawson, definitely someone to keep an eye on. Anyone that needs edge rushers. I do think he'll be back in Cincinnati, but he made himself a lot of money, stayed healthy. I'm happy for Carl Lawson as a player that I thought had no business going in the 4th round. One of my original great draft takes. Along within that class, I had Kenny Golladay and Chris Godwin as 1st to 2nd round talents as some of the best receivers in that class. I actually like those 2 players more than Mike Williams in that class who went in the top 10. So it wasn't all misses in my very first draft class, but definitely missed on Nathan Peterman. I will say that. So then we are into the top 5. Leonard Williams makes the list. Leonard Williams has been not a bust, definitely not a bust, but he's been underwhelming given, he was regarded as the best player in that class. He was regarded as this perennial all-pro, kind of do-it-all defensive tackle who ended up going 6th overall to the Jets. And he definitely came into the league as a very good player, but he never really grew from that point on. He never really molded his body. He never crafted his skill set. But here for the New York Giants, they have found a way to get the best out of Leonard Williams. They use him as kind of that Belichickian defensive end in a lot of ways. He plays a lot of 4 technique. He is not a mauling nose tackle type. He is better when you can kind of get him in one-on-ones and utilize his quickness to, in a lot of ways, make the most out of stunts in the blitz game, like slanting him, either wrapping him and being the guy that you're trying to scheme open, or slanting him to put a lot of pressure on multiple offensive linemen so that you can loop a linebacker or an edge outside linebacker in behind him. He's great in this scheme is what I'm getting at as that 3-tech. He'll even come out and play some edge for the Giants. So they're using him in a great way. But I do think he has come into his own as far as winning those one-on-ones when he gets them, playing better run defense. Ended up playing on a franchise tag this season. And I think, no doubt, the New York Giants end up extending him here after the year he had. They traded for him. They used the franchise tag on him. He's not going to be like... I don't think his cap hit will be much different than it was this year. I think the tag number on him was about $16 million. And I think that's about what he gets. I don't think he's quite... Kenny Clark or Chris Jones. I'm not sure. I think Grady Jarrett got paid recently at like $16 million. And I think Grady Jarrett's a better player than Leonard Williams. So I think Leonard Williams comes in around the same cap hit that the franchise tag number was on him, which makes it easier for the Giants to justify that, because it's like, all right, we'll plug in that number now for the next few years. He is one of their, him and Bradbury, really, Dexter Lawrence is pretty good, but they need to continue to add talent to that defense, not let talent go. So Leonard Williams doesn't exactly play a premium position, but he does it at a very high level, and I think he's going to get, about a 5-year, $80-ish million contract, probably closer to 70, maybe 5 years, 74, 75 million, about 50 guaranteed. So Leonard Williams made himself a lot of money this year. Then we have some more line play. Brandon Scherff, right guard for the Washington football team, plays on the franchise tag this year. Had arguably the best year of his career. He is, to me, one of the best run blockers in the NFL and always has, but run blocking success can often be, almost always is, very dependent on the play around you. And the Washington football team's, their offensive line has not been good for the last 4 or 5 years. Scherff got to the point where he ended up having to get franchise tagged here and didn't really have the leverage to hold out in that situation. He played on the franchise tag, and that's not going to be the case this year. He's getting paid. I do think Washington pays him. They'd be really dumb not to. But his market's going to be really high. Between him and Quentin Nelson starting to come up, I think we're going to see 2 record-breaking guard contracts. I think Zach Martin is probably currently the highest paid guard right now. I can't think of anyone else that makes more money. I think Zach Martin. Let's go back to the internet for a second. Let's look up the top guard contracts. Yeah, Zach Martin. Oh, Martin does get $14 million. So yeah, I think Scherff gets. He was $15 million on the franchise tag this year, because they just use offensive line in general, I think, for the franchise tag. So yeah, I think Brandon Scherff, he's gonna reset the guard market at about 16, maybe 17 million. I think 16 is probably the number there for the Washington football team. I do think they keep him around. He's been a franchise player for them. And then when Quentin Nelson is up, he might reset that number, or they might extend him this offseason. But yeah, Brandon Scherff, getting back to the respect he deserves as a top 3 guard in the NFL. I think you go the Notre Dame guys in either order: Zach Martin and Quentin Nelson, and then Brandon Scherff is probably third, unless Brandon Brooks is another guy that's in there, but he's up there in age. So Brandon Scherff crushing it for the football team. And then a former teammate of Brandon Scherff, Trent Williams, in a contract season. So Trent Williams, at a point in time, to me, was the best tackle in football, and this year was right back in that conversation. You're looking at probably 4 guys that are in that debate. You got Williams here. You've got Stanley for the Ravens, David Bakhtiari, and I'm not ready to put Laramie Tunsil in that conversation quite yet. But those 3 guys are really the top 3 tackles in football. And Trent Williams is going to get probably about $20 million because he's going to hit the market here. And the Niners don't have a ton of cap to play with. I think they would love to get him, but I don't know if they're going to be able to. And this was a move that they made. Trent Williams was kind of a risk. He had injury history. He had cancer that he had to deal with that sounds like is behind him, hopefully, for his sake. But yeah, they traded a 4th-round pick for him, basically got him for free for a year. Unfortunately for the Niners, the rest of the team fell apart. Ironically, Trent Williams, who's had a hard time staying healthy, did not. But yeah, Trent Williams, the best run-blocking tackle in the NFL, almost assuredly. His ability to get on the move in that Shanahan offense, he had some highlight reel blocks, man. You talk about pancakes, woo, he made a few of them. And I'm not talking about breakfast here. So Trent Williams, I think, gets $20 million, and I'm looking at, some of these teams. I'm looking at Miami. I'm looking at teams with cap space. Maybe the Jets play him at right tackle. Maybe I don't think the football team. I don't think he has any interest in going back to the football team after what played out there. Maybe the Jaguars would get in on Trent Williams. But some of these teams that are going to dole out the bag, like if he hits the market, and I think he will, because I don't know if the Niners can afford this contract with the way things are structured there for them. He could get more than Laramie Tunsil got, because he could play this market really well. He could get $22 million. He could become the highest paid non-quarterback on the offensive side of the ball in the NFL. So he is intriguing, but you are a little worried about his age, his injury history, so that might drag him down a little bit. And he did play for a scheme that really benefited his skill set. But yeah, Trent Williams, man, what a year. Arguably the best tackle in the NFL this year. I don't know if he was voted first team All-Pro. They may have gone with David Bakhtiari. I would have to check that, but I know he was definitely right there for first team All-Pro. I think he did. I think he did get first team All-Pro. But speaking of first team All-Pro, this next guy, huge breakout season. Corey Linsley for the Green Bay Packers. This offensive line was not the offensive line that played in the NFC Championship game for the majority of the season. And even in that game, the pressure was not coming from the middle. That's for damn sure. It was the tackles. But Corey Linsley voted first team All-Pro, the best pass-protecting center in the NFL, and he has evolved as a run-blocking center. And this was a big breakout for Corey Linsley. People knew he was good, but nobody really regarded him as an elite center. I think a lot of people compared him to J.C. Treader for the Packers, who's a really good center for the Browns, but kind of this revolving wheel of third, fourth round centers, interior offensive linemen. You also had like T.J. Lang and there was another guard that was Josh Sitton, I think. But these kind of mid-round picks that the Packers take and they develop them in their system, and then they kind of just go off somewhere else and are still really good, but not quite what they were in Green Bay. I think people looked at Corey Linsley just like those guys, but it was not the case. I mean, he turned into a mauler in the run game, the best pass-protecting center in the NFL. I thought was worthy of the first-team All-Pro. It should have been either him or Rodney Hudson. And to me, securing Corey Linsley is the number one priority for the Green Bay Packers. And I don't really care for them what it takes. Franchise tagging, paying him the bag. I think if they pay Aaron Jones and let Corey Linsley go, they're making a really terrible mistake. So to me, Packers have to bring him back. Because if they don't, he's going to be the highest paid center in the NFL. And even if they do bring him back, he's going to be the highest paid center in the NFL. And I don't think he's like those other guards and those other centers that they did replace. To me, I like Anthony Jennings a lot. I do. But he has not been as good at center as he has been at guard, Anthony Jennings. I think Jennings is great in the position where he is, where he doesn't necessarily have to worry about everything going on around him. He's still a young player. Rodgers and Corey Linsley, they have that communication. They can secure the pass protection. I just think losing him would be a huge mistake for the Green Bay Packers. And I think you would get worse at center because I don't think I like Anthony Jennings, but I don't think his strengths as a run blocker would be capitalized moving to center. So you're getting worse at guard, you're getting worse at center. It's kind of a no-brainer to me. You got to find a way to bring Corey Linsley back if you're the Packers, even if it's releasing Preston Smith or whatever it is. But Corey Linsley is a total stud, had an immense breakout season. This is a really weird metric to use, but a lot of you guys that watch this podcast are Madden guys. Well, EA Sports had Corey Linsley with normal development. Like, they thought he was just a dime a dozen center. It's a very weird metric to use, but he is arguably the best center in the NFL right now, I would say, behind Rodney Hudson. Maybe a little Aaron Donald complex going on there where Rodney Hudson's been getting it year after year. They wanted to give it to someone else. I can get behind that. But still, Corey Linsley, an absolute rock, literally in the middle of the offensive line for the Green Bay Packers. And then the number one guy that on my list here is another Corey Davis for the Tennessee Titans. This is a very intriguing player, and he reminds me a lot of Allen Robinson when he left the Jaguars. It just wasn't necessarily a great fit, and cap-wise, I don't think they're going to be able to compete with what Corey Davis is going to ask for. He's a former top 10 pick, a freak athlete. He is your prototype, just his body and his athleticism. He is a prototype elite number 1 wide receiver. He just hasn't quite produced at that level, but he was one of the most dominant receivers in the NFL this year. And then he's going to get the bag. Like, he is going to go to one of these teams, Washington or, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Patriots. Someone's going to give Corey Davis a boatload of money. I will say, I do question if he has that next gear from a work ethic perspective. I think he has underwhelmed slightly as far as, kind of having that it factor that a lot of receivers have, like Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown on his own team. Like, some of these receivers just have that, like, my ball bitch mentality, and they put in that extra work. I'm not saying Corey Davis is lazy. I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's got some, another basketball analogy here, he's got some Andrew Wiggins qualities about him, where he kind of relies on his athleticism a little bit too much. I don't think his development has been quite what it needs to be. So I don't know if he's ever going to be a true number 1 receiver in that regard, but he is a high-end number 2, as he showed in Tennessee here, and it's a premium position. There's a lot of teams that would love to have Corey Davis, whatever the cost. So I think Corey Davis, who had an excellent season this year, very reliable, very consistent, looking at, a high-end number 2, a low-end number 1 type of guy, who's going to get probably about $18-19 million this year to one of those teams that really needs a wide receiver. I don't think he'll be back in Tennessee. So there is your top 10 contract year breakouts.